Look, Chicago's amazing theater scene that we are always bragging about. It really is for everybody. I'm talking about you, your nieces and nephews, your granny, your co-workers, the entire graduating class of '05. And now's the best time to explore it because Chicago Theater Week is back, my friends. February 5th through the 15th, you can find tickets across Chicago's theaters for $30, $15 holla, and even less. Discover new stories, revisit classics, and be a part of something bigger. Chicago Theater Week 2026 is February 5th through the 15th. Get your tickets now at chicagotheaterweek.com and support your local small theater. Chicago knows how to kick off a new year, and that's with great food. That's right, Chicago Restaurant Week is back from January 23rd through February 8th. The 19th annual event produced by Choose Chicago features prefix menus. I'm talking $30 for lunch and brunch, $45 and $60 for dinner at more than 500 restaurants across the city. You can use the website to see the full list or filter by cuisine type or use the map feature. But pro tip, make your reservations as soon as possible because they go quick. Explore participating restaurants and menus at chicagorestaurantweek.com and book your tables now. Today on CityCast Chicago, a woman shot by immigration agents in Brighton Park last year testifies in D.C. Why are so many Chicago restaurants closing? And what are the most romantic spots in the city? It's Thursday, February 5th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. From the Chicago Reader, we've got their new editor-in-chief, Sarah Conway, in the building. Welcome back, my friend.
Jacoby, thank you for having me. I love being on CityCast.
We always are glad to have you in the building. We've also got New York Times contributor and NBC Chicago's newest food guy, the homie Kevin Pang, with us. Good to see you, my guy.
Hey, Jacoby, nice to see you.
First off, before we jump to the episode, I got to say congratulations are in order for you both. I have had the pleasure of talking with you both multiple times over the last few years and most recently during some major moments and accomplishments for y'all. Sarah, we last spoke when you won a Pulitzer Prize. Kevin, when your latest show, Poochie and Pang, debuted, you stopped by and made some time for us. And now y'all are back with these brand new cool ass jobs. Sarah, I want to start with you. How excited are you for this next challenge in this new role?
Okay, something I'm very excited about is that we have come back in print. We paused in December and we have moved to printing a monthly magazine. It's still free. It's still available at over 600 locations throughout Chicago. So we're pretty excited about that. And we have a lot of, interesting projects and stories in the pipeline for the future. But I'm really happy. We have a unique cover too. It is a giant glistening egg to symbolize a new era for us, as an over 50-year-old publication. Started in 1971. So that's a pretty significant moment for the staff and me that we're celebrating that we're back and we love Chicago and we're happy to be here as a city paper, free and freaky since 1971. So that's my personal thing that I'm excited about.
I have been a longtime fan, ardent supporter of the Reader. I remember actually the first paper that I picked up when I moved to Chicago. It wasn't the Chicago Tribune, which is what I moved to Chicago for. It was, in fact, a Reader back in 2003, and big fan of it, and, really glad to see it under Sarah's editorship and, going to be supporting it all the way. And to all of you who are listening out there, please support your local publications, and I'm going to be a continued reader going on.
Kevin, over to you. Again, congratulations, my friend. You've obviously been covering this topic both in the city and across the country for years and years and years. But what about this new role is so exciting for you?
I've been in food journalism, local food journalism, for something like 15 years. And, it's definitely not what it used to be in terms of folks covering it. I mean, this is really the story's been true in local journalism. And so to join a company that is really keeping the flames of local food journalism alive at NBC Chicago, following in the footsteps of the inimitable Steve Dolinsky. It's really quite an honor, and so I'm really happy to be able to tell these stories every Thursday nights on the 10 o'clock news, and I'm just being able to go out and find stories from Michelin-starred chefs to mom-and-pop restaurants and just telling their stories. It's really quite an honor, and I think that's what I'm most excited about.
I love to hear that. All right, so y'all know the drill. When we bring in these amazing voices like our friends we got in here with us today, we always want to know what is the story they are paying attention to, that they are following right now. And Sarah, let's start with you.
So the story that I'm following the most closely is the story of Marimar Martinez. She went to Washington, D.C. this week. She's a 30-year-old woman from Chicago. She was shot 5 times by U.S. Border Patrol agent in Chicago, here in the city in October 2025. In Brighton Park. And she's in DC because she's testifying before a federal forum focusing on the use of force by Department of Homeland Security agents. And, the federal agents that have been here, they've been in LA, they've been in Minneapolis right now. And she's calling for accountability from federal agents and wants officials to acknowledge that she is not a domestic terrorist, which the government labeled her as after the shooting. And it's a label that has not been officially rescinded yet. And I think it's a really important story because Marimar has framed that she survived this incident, but we know that Renee Good and Alex Preddy in Minneapolis did not. And I think why it's such an important story is that during the ramp up of immigration enforcement in the city that has deeply impacted immigrant communities, particularly Latino communities, that so many Chicagoans turned up to protect their neighbors across race, across class, across background. And so many of those people were doing the same thing that these 3 individuals were doing, which is rapid response. Finding these ad hoc ways to try to document violence from federal agents and in ways disrupt immigration enforcement. And so I think it's a super important story to follow because it is about how the federal government under the Trump administration has tried to really deeply criminalize. And also, I think, a source used this with me one time. It's like supreme acts of violence from the state that we're seeing in sort of these very public executions and killings of rapid responders. And the attempted killing of Marimar, she talked about that yesterday in DC. She, was like, I am surprised that I really survived this experience. Like, it's a miracle that I did. She had said, I am their voice, speaking to Renee and Alex, who are no longer with us, who were killed in Minneapolis. So I think it's a extremely important moment to follow. Around government transparency, her legal team is asking a federal judge to release the body cam footage and other evidence from her own shooting so the public can really see what happens. So I think it's a story to follow. I think it has really big implications for what's going to happen with this administration around accountability and transparency, and hopefully putting guardrails on, the further harm. And I think that's both against everyday people that are doing rapid response to protect their community members, and then also immigrant communities themselves and their family members and their friends. Like, this is, I think, a moment that has left really no Chicagoan untouched. It's been such an interesting moment in time to see the ways that Chicagoans have, in a city that sometimes can feel so divided, really showed up for one another, and that the ways that communities really have tried to protect like the people who are most vulnerable to these abductions and deportations. So that's a story that is close to my heart and that I'm following. And, I think it's really like a miracle that we're, what had happened with Marimar. And I think it's incredible that she's been in DC talking about her experience, and that takes such strength after going through so much trauma.
Right after we heard of not only the shooting of Marimar, because that immediately spread across social media, but to your point, the federal government came out swiftly, coordinated in a narrative about not only her being a domestic terrorist, which, to your point, even the judge in this case has railed against the federal government for not removing those statements. But as they brought charges up, I think something that shocked me was how quickly the courts dismissed them, how quickly their narrative fell apart. And prosecutors said, this week that they are not pushing back against the release of that body cam footage on that incident on October 4th. They are open to having additional evidence released, including FBI photographs, reports, Martinez's 911 call. And we'll wait to see if on Friday we'll rule to allow those materials to be released. And like I said, while that judge chose not to allow that information to be released in an earlier case, it does seem their tone may have shifted a little bit as they continue to push back against, again, the federal government's coordination around what has proven to be lies, not only in this case, but in other uses of violence and shooting and killing cases thus far. What's been clear throughout this, and the confusion a lot of people feel, is like, well, who's going to hold these individuals accountable? In this case, right, they've been allowed to keep the lies up on social media, even though the case has been dropped. No one has yet been brought forth to be held accountable, including the agent who shot Martinez 5 times. And now we hear in Chicago that the mayor wants to try to use some authority to keep track of these violations, this violence, and then hopefully bring up charges. But, so many people like myself are really concerned that won't amount to much, very skeptical, given he's asking Chicago police, notorious in their own right for violating our rights, notorious in their own right for exacting violence against community members. He's leaving them as the documenters and then saying they must pass it on to what right now seems like a very apprehensive state's attorney's office.
It's interesting, Jacoby, because one of the things that was sitting in my mind was I was thinking about the narratives around Laquan McDonald. I think different time, different place. Laquan, I think about him often, a young person who was in DCFS. And it's interesting when we kind of think about the use of body cam. And here we're talking about federal agents body cam, but at that time it was CPD body cam, and like the narratives that can live on that body cam, or how body cam can and cannot document certain things. But I think that there's sort of like, to me, when I think about this moment, it's, in Chicago and then also in Minneapolis with the recent shootings and killings that happened there, was like the power of everyday people documenting things themselves and how that can really counter narratives from the state. And I think that journalists also play a really important role in our inquiry, in that really pushing to find the truth in what is happening in these scenarios. Because I think if local reporting hadn't been done, and, thinking about Marimar really immediately after the shooting put herself out there in media with a lawyer in a pretty vulnerable way, but like actually correcting the narrative that was starting to really expand online. And I think that, that points to like the power of independent media and the power of everyday documenters who are going out and taking video and then making sure that it's getting out there to counter, the narrative of the state. And so, in terms of like ultimately the responsibility, I mean, I think it pushes back to sort of like the federal government and Congress and our elected officials who should be taking on this responsibility of putting guardrails around what's going on. Because, we're seeing this massive wave of human rights violations across the country. I would say like trust in media, it can sometimes be low, but that is what I think is really shining a light on a lot of the violations against just everyday people that are happening. And, thank God that people are doing that, and often to great risk that they're doing it as well, and even documenting this.
100%. I think about the woman who was recording the video right alongside Pretty and how close she could have been to catching one of those bullets. I mean, it's clear when we think about the case of, Keith Porter out in California, Renee Nicole Good, Alex Pretty, Silverio Villegas, Martinez. Had there not been additional footage, had there not been people around, had Martinez, she survived, but had she not come out, what's clear is the narrative put forth by the federal government, one that was echoed at every level, that would have been the one people ran with.
One last thing I was going to say that I think is also why this story feels so significant. is that it fits into, I think, a constellation of seeing the ways that there are these very grassroots movements, oftentimes autonomous movements of rapid response around the country happening, and that how both skills and information and strategies are being very localized and developed and then shared between cities from LA to Chicago, from Chicago, to Minneapolis. And I think it's really a fascinating moment to see how everyday people are in real time displaying a checks and balances of the government. And it's also really tragic that that's also where we're at. But I think it speaks to the strength of Chicago, people like Marimar, that they literally have put their lives on the line to document, this the actions of this administration.
One thing Chicago gonna talk about is our architecture. I bet any single person listening right now could probably point out a fun fact about one of our historic buildings. You done probably took your people on the riverboat tour, or at the very least, you out here shaming other people's skyline because it's not ours. Which is why it makes perfect sense that the Architecture and Design Film Festival has returned to the city for its 4th year at the Chicago Architecture Center. It's 10 films that explore architecture, design, creativity, and human connection. And we're not just talking about buildings. Themes range from graphic design to the architecture of NASA space shuttles to protected bike lanes. This year's festival is February 19th through the 22nd at the Siskel Film Center, and several of the screenings include discussions with the filmmakers who are flying in from all over the world. Find all the film trailers and ticketing information at architecture.org/filmfest. The Museum of Contemporary Photography at Columbia College Chicago is celebrating their 50th anniversary all year long. First thing you're going to want to do is stop by the exhibition MOCP at 50, Collecting Through the Decades. It's on view through May 16th, and it explores how the museum built their one-of-a-kind collection of nearly 18,000 artworks. Then mark your calendars for February 26th because they throwing a little party. Darkroom is the museum's annual benefit auction. You can experience beautiful and thought-provoking photography, meet some artists, and enjoy food and drinks from around the city. So make some time to stop by soon. You can find info about the exhibition or buy tickets to Darkroom at mocp.org. Dear CityCast listeners, today is going to be a good day, and here's why. Dear Evan Hansen is coming to the Paramount Theater in Aurora. If you've got any theater folks in your life, you have definitely heard them singing this soundtrack before, and for good reason. 6 Tonys, a Grammy for Best Musical Theater Album, national tour after national tour, and a story for every single person who just wants to be seen. A Little White Lie becomes this enormous blizzard of untruths, taking lonely, anxious teen Evan on a wild journey towards love and acceptance, even when you make mistakes. Catch Dear Evan Hansen February 4th through March 22nd at Paramount Theater in Aurora. You do not want to miss this deal. Get your tickets today at ParamountAurora.com. Kevin, I want to bring you in here. We already know that this time of year can be difficult for restaurants as people are hunkering down in the cold. And so that's why you see things like Chicago Restaurant Week, encouraging people to take advantage of deals at some of their favorite restaurants or places they may not have visited yet. Valentine's Day around the corner, people are thinking about getting those reservations in. But your story talks about the difficulty some restaurants face just sort of making it day to day right now. So kind of talk us through what you're watching.
Yeah, I was thinking earlier about what is going to be the big trend in 2026 that I'm seeing in local food, local restaurants. And, I thought about, well, do I want to talk about something in the food realm? Like, is it the trend of, bagels or Asian-inspired bakeries like, Deji Dough and Del Sur are very popular. Mm-hmm. But I think the real story here, and one that can't necessarily be packaged in a, neat, tidy story, is just the continued struggles of running a restaurant in Chicago. And it's a confluence of tiny reasons that really add up in the aggregate into, a very difficult situation for restaurateurs. Just the number of restaurants that I've seen close, not just in the downtown corridor. You might think, oh, maybe if you're in the Loop and the office workers aren't returning, they might have a real problem there. Yes, that continues to be a problem. But then I'm also seeing mom and pop bakeries in Highland Park, say, for example, that have been closing in recent weeks, months, and years here. And I think it can be attributed to a number of things. First off, we've not completely recovered from the post COVID economics. I think people are still expecting things to cost a certain price. And, when you can't go out and dine with two people, a table for two without alcohol can cost something like $90 to $100, right? That's really, that becomes something that you dine out once a week to, once every 2-3 weeks. I mean, that's significantly cuts down the number of times that you as a consumer want to go out. So that's one thing. You have the continued, the cost of labor going up with the minimum wage, the shifting of dining habits, as I was talking about earlier, the real estate pressures, like the rents in places like West Loop and Wicker Park are just gone up significantly. I mean, you look at a restaurant like there's a restaurant called Fire from the Alinea Group, Grant Achatz' team. That closed,
they didn't even make it over a year and a half, did they?
Not even that. I think it was like even less than a year. And I think in the, were there other reasons and considerations that caused its closure? Maybe, I don't know. But at least in the public statements, they said that it was the cost of rising rents in the West Loop that caused it to close. So, so that's a situation. And then you also have the uncertainty around tariffs, especially with, a lot of the international, restaurants that are importing ingredients from outside the country. That continues to being an uncertainty. Is the price is going to go up or go down at any one day? You really don't know. So I think it is and to be clear, Jacoby, this is not happening in Chicago, but it happens to be exacerbated in Chicago, especially when you have very, very cold winters. And, certainly these last few weeks, we've had very, very cold temperatures. And I know restaurateur friends of mine who've said that their business has just been, down even worse than usual over the last 2-3 weeks because of the weather. I remember last week when a lot of the small businesses were holding that one-day general strike of closing. And what you saw on social media was a lot of restaurants saying that as much as we support the cause of this, we do not have the capacity to shut down today because we have the weather causing people not to come in, with us ordering food, and we got to, go through all that. So with rent coming up, privately, restaurateurs of some very highly regarded places with Michelin stars telling me that they probably have within them 4 to 6 months. And these are some of your favorite restaurants. It's a very, very perilous and uncertain times for Chicago restaurants. And I'll say one more thing. There are something about 6,000 restaurants in the Chicago area. And, obviously there are restaurants that are doing well, and there are new restaurants that are gaining a lot of buzz. And there are restaurants where you have to line up for, the Kasamas of the world, the Del Surs of the world, where you are lining up, and social media is doing a big part in building that buzz. But just from a numbers game, you've got 6,000 restaurants. You have 200, 300 restaurants that are going to be doing really well because of the legacy goodwill, because of good social media buzz. That leaves, the majority of them that are really, really struggling. And so it's the mom and pop businesses. It's also the Michelin starred businesses that are really going to be affected by this. And I think we're going to see a lot of our favorite restaurants close down, sadly, over these next months.
I'm looking at some of the numbers, and the first half of last year, so we lost about 496 restaurants, which was down from 689 over that same period in 2024. But as you lay out this sort of massively nuanced conversation. I think what becomes difficult is it's such a hard thing to track, right? You got 6,000 restaurants and there's so many different reasons. Maybe it's rising rent. Maybe it's labor costs. Maybe the next generation doesn't want to take it on, right? Maybe it's just a retirement. People are done with it. But what I end up seeing, whether it's a bakery I love or, my favorite sandwich spot, somebody drove a car into it and it just never came back. I miss you, Taurus. I miss you. What the sad part is, we usually don't find out until the last moment. I think of Violet Hour or even a Timeout Market. You don't find out until the sign is about to go on the door. And so as a Chicagoan, how would I know my favorite places is struggling?
Well, sadly, Jacoby, I think your default mindset should be your favorite restaurant is probably struggling right now.
That's a good point.
Even the most beloved, famous chefs that have been around for 30, 40 years, they are struggling right now. I can tell you privately, they're telling me that places that you expect to be lively and buzzing downtown they are struggling. So I think that's the default mindset. To your point about not knowing until the last day, I can only speculate, but I think there might be a matter of pride in not wanting to advertise your struggles. And also, once you tell people that, hey, my place is struggling, yeah, you might get that short-term sugar rush of people coming in to try to support you. But then I don't know, maybe you start getting this, the taste that's left in your mouth of a place that's struggling and like, well, is it worth really supporting them? So I think there might be some part of that, whether it's pride, whether it's just not wanting to tell people that you're struggling and just saying, not telling people until it's really too late. So I think really the default mindset you should be thinking of is that your favorite places is probably not doing as well as they should. And that's how we should be looking at it.
Yeah. Were there any spots that recently closed that either of you were kind of hit particularly hard by?
One of them we featured on our show, Pucci and Pang, last season, called Taquizas Valdez. And, the chef there, Ivan Valdez, just a very, really strong story. He opened up the restaurant very much in tribute to his late mother and really cooking some amazing tortas, some of this, really fantastic salsas. And this was on Irving Park Road. They closed economically, they couldn't find a way to make it work anymore. So I was very sad to see that one close. Smoke Daddy, which has been the place in Wicker Park that's been around for something like 30 years. Yeah, that closed recently. And then, a place like Proxy, which was doing really, really, I really love the food that was happening at Proxy, which was in the West Loop. This is from the Sepia team. They close at around the time of the New Year's. And so, it's a very big dining space, and the West Loop is not a very cheap place for rent. So that may have contributed to its closure. And then, other closures for various reasons that, not necessarily financial. There was a fire at Dear Margaret, which is the Quebecois French restaurants in Lakeview. We had included it as one of our newest entrants in the best 25 restaurants in Chicago in the New York Times list that I helped put together. They closed because of a fire, and they're now trying to find a space to reopen there. And then, of course, Timeout Chicago. Now we're talking about not just one family, but multiple families whose livelihood are disrupted because this massive food hall was not able to find a way to make it work. So, I was struggling to find places, and not because of a lack of places, but for the exact opposite, because there's so many places that, how do you keep track of these things?
Exactly. I was thinking about Lynn's Chicago Pizza, which opened in September 2024 and then closed towards the end of last year. Their catering business is still open, but that was one of those places I'm like, I didn't even get to get over there as many times as I wanted before things had changed. And so to your point, it further emphasizes it really can't take these places for granted. And, it's better to keep the mentality, everybody's having a tough time and support where you can. Before we wrap things up and go on our way, I've got to ask, Valentine's Day is next Saturday. I've already been dragged on the podcast for not having a reservation early enough. We've got tons of pop-ups, restaurant deals, but I wanted to know from y'all suggestions for most romantic spots in the city, or your favorite most romantic spot in the city. Sarah, I'm gonna start with you.
Okay, I love this question. I've prepared. So my date I'm pitching is go to King Spa and Sauna in Niles.
You're already Simone's favorite person. That's one of her favorite places to go.
Take a little trip outside the city, okay? Not very far. Go there with your partner, experience the pools, go into the area where all the saunas are, experience the saunas. Here's the pro tip. Go and watch a movie together in the movie theater inside of King Spa. It's actually, I found out recently that the King Spa that is in Washington, D.C. area does not have a movie theater. And if you have been watching movies at the King Spa, you know that it's like Matrix 3, Rush Hour 2. I recently watched Salt, the Angelina Jolie movie there.
Yes.
Okay, do that. Enjoy like the, early 2000s, cinema experience, and then leave and actually walk across, especially if it's the end of day, go to H Mart to the food court. And if you go towards the last hour, 2 hours, you can actually get some really great half price sushi from the food court. It's really wonderful. Mom and pop owned stops in there, and buy some food at H Mart, enjoy it, and all the wonderful things that H Mart has to offer. That's what I think is my date that I am pitching you all for Valentine's Day.
I absolutely love that.
I have to say, though, I'm somewhat embarrassed as an Asian person to say that I have not yet been to King Spa. And I feel like if you're an Asian person in Chicago, you've not been to King Spa, you should have your card revoked, right? But I think I love spas in general. I love a good massage, but Sarah, I can't get over the nude policy. So can you talk me off the ledge of this? You have to be completely naked in certain parts of the spa.
100%. So I would say the thing I love about King Spa, it is a traditional Korean spa. There is they separate people by, genders. You go in and you have the option. If you don't want to do the full nude part, you can just pass through and head to the sauna. So I would sell it that if you want to bypass that whole aspect of the experience, Kevin, you definitely can. And that's actually the number one thing when I've brought it up is hesitation about going to King Spa. But once whether that's for you or not for you, there are a whole handful of different rooms you can go into. There's an oxygen room, there's a meditation room. There's just the giant leather couches that you can bring a book on your date, and you can read a book with the person you're on the date for at Valentine's Day and hang out. Go to the food court inside of the spa. I like to go and get a nice aloe juice drink to hydrate myself while I'm going through all these different saunas. My favorite sauna is I like the base rock. It's a very hot rock that you lie on, and really helps with the back. So that's Kevin, it's that's a common thing that I hear people say, and I would just say avoid it. If that's not for you, but there's still a lot of different things that you can enjoy at the spa. And H Mart is just such a wonderful grocery store. I believe it's a mega H Mart that's up in Niles. So, that's a whole other experience to kind of have for the day, or do grocery shopping on, the end of your date.
Well, over to you, Kevin. What's a romantic spot for you?
Well, my definition of romantic, I think it's more like a set of criteria. There's something about tradition that I find very, romantic. My wife and I, we're very sort of old school in that way. We like the maitre d's, and we would like, the tuxedos. Not to say that we're humorless killjoys, that we don't like, chefs who wear jeans and, leather aprons and stuff like that. We love that stuff too. But, when it comes to, there's something about a romantic restaurant where you got to go dress up for the occasion. You have a maitre d' and with the bow ties. It's something fun where you get to play dress up, right? So in that regards, I like going to the French restaurants. I like going to, Mon Ami Gabi in Lincoln Park. That's always like, a fun place to go to. I love a place with a, really beautiful view. And I think there are a few restaurants as beautiful as Gibson's Italia, which is overlooks the Chicago River. Tre Dita, which is in the St. Regis Hotel, also has like a really gorgeous view as well.
Very beautiful.
I
Very
love
beautiful.
that, yes. And I just noticed that places that have very dark decor are, they are more romantic. And so I like a place like the Loyalist. That's long been one of my favorite restaurants. The upstairs component, Smith, has 3 Michelin stars. The downstairs component, the Loyalist, it's more like a French bistro, and it's a lot more casual, but it's super dark, and I love being able to stare at your partner at candlelight, right?
The steak frites is amazing. The burger is fine.
Exactly. One of the city's best burgers, and just great French food. So anyway, dark is good. Maitre-d's are good. French food is good. Restaurants with a view are good as well.
Mm-hmm. No, I love the French cosplay. A couple of years ago, when me and my girlfriend first started dating, she told me that she really wanted to go to Paris for her birthday, and she wanted to go during a couple of years earlier, but the pandemic had happened. And so during her birthday, we went to Obelique and Coquette, which Coquette at the time had just opened, but we were the only ones in there that night. I was like, I rented it out for us tonight, a little French bar. It was a lovely night. I will say it meant that the next year I had to book Paris, and we had to actually go there because I couldn't get off to French inspired birthday celebrations, but it was a nice primer. As somebody who had never really been to a French restaurant or even a French bar at that point in the city, it was a really nice weekend. I understood the romance of it all very quickly.
I will give you a tip. If you're ever in a situation where your significant other requests that they take you to Paris for some sort of romantic excursion, right? There is actually a cheaper version that is actually just, I think, as romantic, which is go to Quebec City. Quebec City. It is the most European city in North America. And it is only 3 hours from Chicago, and it's really, really nice to go there, especially during the winter. It's a walled city. Unlike Montreal, they speak mostly French there. I mean, Montreal is much more of a bilingual city, but Quebec City is essentially Paris in North America, and it's probably about half the price it is to go to Paris. So,
hey, that's good to know. So like right now during the winter, I spend a lot of time maybe going to concerts, to the theater. And one place that I have grown to love more and more over the last few years, and I know it is so basic, but it's the Music Box Theater. I feel like I am so fancy every time I go. The marquee gets me every single time, taking pictures outside of it. And just every time I sit in there, I feel so regal. Like the auditorium is gorgeous. It feels like everyone who is flocking in there is like a little pretentious, got a little cinephile on their resume. And I don't know, I like that a little bit. I love finishing a show or a movie and just sort of diving into all of its different elements. And so the Music Box feels like a place I can go indulge, whether I'm catching a classic, whether I'm catching something new. It always feels like a romantic time out. And so that's my winter spot.
I love that. My partner and I frequently go to Music Box, and I would be like, my Valentine's Day twist was we watch all of the credits. And if you're looking for a little romantic moment, stay with your partner through all the credits. You will likely be one of the last people in there. You can kind of enjoy that big, beautiful old space and be together. And like, there's really nothing like Music Box. Such a wonderful theater. I'm in total agreement with you, Jacoby.
When you said, Jacoby, that you felt guilty, it was a little bit basic. I don't know if it's an age thing, but I am all about embracing the basics. I remember one Valentine's Day, my wife and I, we had KFC and like a bottle of champagne. And it was so lovely because there's nothing I love in the world more than KFC original recipe chicken, like thighs and wings. Like I love nothing more than that. And, it's, if you're lucky enough to be with someone, and be in the pleasure of their company, then I think that's what makes Valentine's Day. And I hope that, everyone out there has someone that they can have the pleasure of their company.
I want to give a huge thank you to our guest today, the brand new editor-in-chief with the Chicago Reader, Sarah Conway. Always good to see you.
Thank you, Jacoby. It's always good to be on.
Good luck with the rest of your day. And NBC's newest food guy and the homie behind Poochie and Pang, Kevin Pang, thank you for making time.
Thanks, Jacoby. Nice to talk to you as always.
Before we get out of here, if you are looking for more news and events and guides, then make sure you are subscribed to the CityCast Chicago newsletter. Also, you know how sometimes I tell y'all about discount codes from our sponsors on the pod? We work really hard to get them deals for y'all, right? Well, sometimes we got codes you can only get if you are signed up for the newsletter, like one we got coming out tomorrow for the Auditorium Theater, one of the most beautiful theaters in all of Chicago. And CityCasters get $20 for the dance show Turn It Out, Tyler Peck and Friends, coming in March. But again, you can only get the code if you are signed up for the newsletter at chicago.citycast.fm. Now, of course, I can't leave you empty-handed. You know I got some good news. Tomorrow night, one of my absolute favorite Chicago singers is hitting the stage at Lemon. Manessi is live with Master Steve and Semi-Cycle for an unforgettable night. I'm going to drop the link in the show notes. As always, I appreciate you for listening and reading. We are back bright and early tomorrow, breaking down some biggest stories across the city with Chastity Cooper and Atavia Reed. We'll talk to you then. Peace.